let's get to the Nick Caserio departure. I guess question, let's fold two into one. Did it surprise you? And again, people now know the story. The Texans hired a consulting firm to go through the top GM candidates out there. They came up with 5, I believe, or 4. They came up with a list that Nick Caserio was not on. And then Nick Caserio got the job. So how did, and we know about the Jack Easterby situation, and it certainly sounds like he made a massive play there. And we'll talk about how that factors into Caserio's Texans experience. But first off, on the Patriots side of things, how big a loss with this, and are you surprised that he left? What led to it?
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, it's a pretty big loss. I mean, you lose 20 years of a guy who ran the personnel department and organized all that, and look, he also helped with coaching. He was in the coaching box on game days. He's on the field before the games. He helps out a lot in practices. So he was almost like personnel / coach. So yeah, there's a lot they're going to miss there. But look, it all depends on what's left after Nick. Now, the big thing, what's interesting, John, is that before Nick was leaving, and I don't know if this factored in, but before he left, I was hearing from people that Dave Ziegler, who is assistant director of player personnel,
right,
and Elliot Wolf, who's a scouting consultant this year, former Packers assistant GM, Cleveland assistant GM, Ron Wolf's son, who came on with the Patriots this year. I had heard that those two names, Ziegler and Wolf, were going to be have more prominent voices going forward. And I didn't think to ask the question because I'm a moron, but at the time, once that was over and I'm typing, and I'm like, once I heard Caserio was leaving, I was like, wait a minute, that's weird. So was Caserio, did he leave, or was he a little bit pushed out, or maybe freed up to leave? I don't know. I don't have a definitive answer on that. If Dave Ziegler is here, then I feel pretty good. He is on the dance card with the Broncos, a team that he previously worked with. So the fear is that he's going to be named Broncos general manager. If that's the case, I have worries about the Patriots department. I mean, I think a lot of Elliot Wolf. I go back a long ways because I covered the Packers way back when. I know Elliot. I know his talents. I know what he's capable of. I think he does have a very good eye for talent. But when you're talking about him all of a sudden ascending to the top of the Patriots personnel structure, if that indeed happens, you're talking about a guy who's only been in the Patriots system for 1 year. And that includes, all right, well, what's Belichick looking for? What's their grading system? And all of a sudden, and all that entails. And now all of a sudden, Elliot Wolf is having to funnel that down to the scouts, the pro scouts, the college scouts, the other people, the cross checkers and things like that. And it's just, all right, well, how's that all going to work? It can't work well. If Ziegler leaves, Ziegler's plan A. And hopefully that happens. And maybe with Caserio leaving, maybe that entices him to stay.
That's my question is the Broncos GM job more attractive than the Patriots GM job to him if he knew he had it?
I mean, the thing is, it hasn't been a GM job since Pioli was here. And that's also part of the issue is, Nick Caserio was here. So Pioli left in 2009 or January 2009 for the Chiefs. And first of all, Belichick offered a flowery statement when Pioli left. So far, in 3 or 4 hours, there's been nothing from Belichick on Caserio. So that's interesting. But that was a big thing with Caserio here is Pioli got the vice president of player personnel title after 1 season as director of player personnel. Nick Caserio was director of player personnel from 2009 on and never got the title. And so that's very much, if you look at the way he handles his coaches, we all know Bill O'Brien did not get the offensive coordinator gig for a year or two after he was here. Brian Flores, I don't think was ever technically defensive coordinator.
Still no DC, right?
Yeah, and there's still no DC. And, McDaniels is offensive coordinator, obviously, but normally it's you don't get those titles unless you earn them in Belichick eyes. Now, is this semantics? Did Belichick just say, we're not doing the VP of whatever once Pioli leaves? You're not a general manager because I'm the general manager.
Right.
So maybe it's semantics. It could be. I don't know. But it's
It's
just
a long
odd.
time to dangle the carrot if it's going to be an incentive. I mean, he was here long enough where I don't know how much more you're going to earn. So again, whether it's semantics or a faith in his ability to do the job, or maybe they just viewed him as replaceable and or, as you said, wanted to get others more involved. If he got shoved out the door a little bit, it makes sense why he would take this Houston gig, which doesn't seem that great given everything that we've learned about it with the Easterby presence and having McNair's ear. It sounds messy over there. It doesn't sound like an awesome. Obviously, he was on their, list last year, and the Patriots didn't let him go. But
and the time before, also that I learned the other day, they actually came for him before that as well, and Belichick also shot that down.
Yeah,
so.
Right. So you've got, let's say, if Ziegler is plan A and he holds, is he the guy? And so you've mentioned before in terms of the player personnel and the evaluation, what Bill may be a little set in his ways at this point where he's overruling the what the scouts are telling him, what the personnel department is telling him on players, and he's kind of going with his guys, whether it's guys he's gotten recommendations from his college coaching buddies or whomever. And so you've talked about before on this podcast, and I know you've written about it, the need for that strong voice of someone who can say, nah, man, Bill, this is the guy. You have to trust me on this. Is Ziegler that guy? And if he's not that guy, does that guy exist? Or does Bill even want that guy?
Yeah, it's all good questions. I don't have a really strong answer on, I don't know Ziegler that well. I don't know his personality. I do wonder if Caserio not getting the VP or GM title had to do with the fact that maybe in his eyes, Belichick's eyes, that Nick never made a stand or he never became a strong enough voice to earn that title. Right. Maybe that was part of it. And there is a lot of concern behind the scenes that Caserio was not a strong enough voice to counter Belichick at times, and to basically, like, even though, I've asked people, I've been like, well, like Bill going rogue on some picks, like early in last year's draft and things like that. And where the Patriots were, I think, going into the draft, they wanted to target more offensive help early. And what does Belichick do? He spends the first 3 picks on defense. And I think I asked the question of somebody at the time. I said, well, did Nick do anything? Is Nick going to do it? And they're like, what is it going to do? Tackle him? Like, right. It's Bill. And so I don't know. I think Bill would like another voice. I don't know. I think maybe he wouldn't acknowledge that, but I think the Patriots definitely need somebody, and maybe this comes into play with, say, a Pioli or Dimitroff or a Bob Quinn, who they could recycle, former Patriots personnel people who are out of jobs right now that could come in. I mean, Pioli certainly would be a strong foil to Belichick. Is he interested in that after running his own ship? Does he want to come back and work for Belichick? I don't know.
But beyond that, the recycling thing, Greg, the concern here would be, again, from anybody who's, and you've been critical of the drafts the last few years. Do you want somebody who's looking at things with 2010 eyes, as the game right. changes and as player evaluations change? And again, the issue here seems to be Belichick, at the end of the day, just having supreme faith in, I know what a good football player is. And you've said that before. That guy's a football player. I know it because I've done this my whole life. And now the question is whether or not he's wrong more often than he used to be, because he's not recognizing how the game has changed or what exactly you need to be successful, and to draft impact players for which they lack. If you bring in an old guy who did it the old way, is there a fear that you're going back to that? You're staying in that system instead of moving forward. Wouldn't it be better theoretically to bring in a younger voice or a newer voice or someone who can look at things a little bit different way and counter Bill? I just don't know that people would be super satisfied with a recycled version of a person who's been here before or been out of the game for a little bit of time.
Yeah, I mean, I get that, but I think that's more of a sort of scheme type of thing. Like, do we want to evolve in certain areas, especially on defense, where whatever we want to use? We let's get back to 3 down guys instead of
Sure.
just role players and things like that. And really, it's at the end of the day. I mean, it doesn't really matter who they bring in, whether it's Scott Pioli or Thomas Dimitroff or it's Ziegler or Elliot Wolf.
Bill's the
Like,
guy.
it doesn't really matter because it's Bill, and it's whatever Bill. And the thing is and I think I talked about it with Nick. I did last podcast. If people want to listen to it, there is enthusiasm within one Patriot place that Belichick does realize what's going on, that he needs to change or at least alter his way. And part of that thinking was changing up some of the voices in the personnel department. And so as of right now, it seems like things are going in the right direction. We'll just have to see how that goes.